America's Heartland is made possible by
They make up a small part of our population, but have a huge impact on our lives. They take business risks few others would tolerate, all on our behalf. They're American farmers who feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Monsanto would like to recognize them for all they do for the rest of us. Because ultimately, our success and everyone else's depends on theirs.
and by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of agriculture.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand in America's heartland, living close to the land.
Hi, I'm Jason Schultz, and welcome to this special Earth Day edition of America's Heartland. You know, I've met farmers and ranch families all across the United States, and while each of them are unique, almost all of them have some very core things in common. They're hardworking, good business people, and most importantly, they have an abiding love of the land. As we celebrate Earth Day, we thought we'd share some of our favorite stories about people who are true environmental stewards. For them, it's more than just good business, it's what they believe in. We start in the Sunshine State of Florida.
It's sunup and saddle up on this early spring morning. The cowboys of Adams Ranch are ready for another roundup.
Morning. What do you got?
These are Florida cowboys. No vast open plains of the American West here. This range is dotted with palm trees, swampy ponds, and thickets of grasses and trees. And here at Adams Ranch near Fort Pierce, the wildlife and the 50,000 acres of preserved landscape make for a picture-perfect scene. A scene not lost on the ranch's owner, Bud Adams. Visit the ranch and you'll likely find him with a camera in his hand.
I'm out here checking on the cattle and to see that they have water, grass, and mineral. And invariably you see a lot of interesting things. You know, I was given an Argus 35mm camera in 1936, I think.
It's a few years ago.
That's a long time.
Over the decades, Bud's captured hundreds of images of life on the ranch.
Well, I started working here 10 years old, so this is the 72nd year I've worked here. Back in those days, we had cross-state cattle drive, and we would have a bedroll and sleep on the ground. It was a hard life, but it was a good life.
His father bought this land in 1937. 10 years later, they had 1,600 head of cattle. Now it's 10,000. And throughout the years, Bud Adams has been there to create a visual record, first on film and now with his digital camera. Bud's photos have ended up in books and various publications.
Although you're a photographer and you're pretty good at it, you see yourself as a cattle rancher, right? That's your bailiwick.
What I do. I raise cattle. I'm a cowman.
That's your passion.
Oh, yeah.
That passion carries on to the next generation of the Adams family. Bud's sons manage various areas of the ranching operation.
And these boys, they start when they're 10 or 11 years old, and now they're in their mid-20s. Why, they're as good as anybody.
And you said these boys, I think I think I might have seen a girl out there too this morning, right?
Yes, yes, we're equal opportunity.
Bud points out that the beautiful ecology here is no accident. It's a balance of nature that has been managed by his family for decades.
I'm sure you've had developers knocking on your door here for to put some homes here.
That is a tremendous problem. With higher land values and a growing population, it will be very difficult to pass this on to the next generation.
What Bud captures here through his lens are more than pretty pictures. He's documenting a way of life and a heritage that has roots deeper than the palm trees that grow on this sandy soil.
We understand that this is a holistic enterprise in that we have to consider the grass, the trees, the cattle, the wildlife, the water, and our climate. The important part of this is your animal agriculture provides a sustainable program.
Concerns about global warming are on the rise, and most experts point to carbon dioxide as a major source of the problem. Well, it turns out that farmers have an important role to play by using some new methods that help keep carbon in the ground and not in the air. Sarah Gardner takes us to Kansas to learn more.
Carbon is a natural element all around us. You'll find it in our air, our water, in animals, and plants. But carbon has become a central issue in the concern over global warming. In particular, CO2 or carbon dioxide created by combustion from petroleum, coal, and natural gas.
There's many greenhouse gases, but that's the one that we know that is most widespread in terms of being emitted or being released into the air.
Dr. Scott Stagenborg is an agronomy professor at Kansas State University. He says carbon dioxide is emitted by just about anything that generates energy, including power plants, automobiles, heating systems. When too much builds up in the atmosphere, heat reflected off the Earth's surface gets trapped in the ozone. So what does all this have to do with agriculture and the research taking place at Kansas State? Well, Scott, along with other researchers nationwide, is turning to American farmers to help address the issue of carbon in our air and in our soil.
We do feel that farmers can have an impact on global warming. If they would adopt these practices widespread, if we could get this adopted across the whole U.S., across the whole world in mechanized agricultural areas, we could really have a big impact on greenhouse gases in the short term.
One of those practices is no-till farming, leaving crop residue on the ground to decompose after harvest. If you remember your elementary science, plants capture carbon dioxide from the air and use it in their growth process. When their life cycle is over, that carbon breaks down into the soil. Left untilled, it stays there.
The amount of carbon that we can take out of the air is about, right now, if we adopted the technology we're talking about, we could probably reduce the 20% of the current emissions total.
Making the transition to a no-till approach might seem to be an easy and effective solution, but not everyone was convinced it was good farming.
I was trained to have a clean seedbed. Every weed was, the only good weed was a dead weed.
Farmer Merle Holly found conventional tilling gave him that clean seedbed, but said his loose soil was often washed away by erosion. No-till gave him crop residue binding the soil together.
You'll see these little rills. Here's a good example right here. You can see the soil is filled in with the residue.
Merle says it took him 5 years of no-till to sufficiently bind his soil. Once stabilized, he saw healthier crops, less irrigation, and less runoff and erosion.
Well, this field that we're in right now has not been tilled since 1990. And so this is part of a long-term tilled and no-tilled study.
Higher residue crops like corn mean more carbon and organic matter going into the ground. That is, once you get the crops planted.
I mean, we all know that in order for plants to grow, we have to get what we talk about as good seed-to-soil contact.
To deal with that, no-till planters have attachments that clear a path in the residue, leaving enough room for that seed-to-soil contact. Merle says no-till has cut field costs by 2/3.
You don't have to plow, you don't have to disc, you don't have to field cultivate or row crop cultivate. You don't have to do any of those.
And there's another benefit. The estimated amount of carbon captured by farmers in no-till can be sold on a national market to corporations looking to offset their carbon emissions.
The concept of carbon credits is taking basically what the farmers do. They take CO2 out of the air and put it in the soil. So now there is less CO2 in the air and it's now in the soil. We can now trade those carbon credits to offset carbon or CO2 that's emitted by cars, people, manufacturing processes.
Whether voluntary or regulated by law, sequestering carbon into the soil could be one element in reducing the amount in the air.
The reason that companies who are involved in large manufacturing situations, the reason they would want to do it is because they realize that they are emitting carbon and that CO2 is a problem, and they want to try to do something to help clean up the environment. And so this is a good way for them to do something immediately.
No-till, along with increased tree plantings and improved crop rotations, is becoming just one tool that agricultural producers can use to address economic and environmental concerns.
The potential is to buy us 20 years of reducing CO2 in the atmosphere while we develop new technologies, while we develop the technology to manufacture cars and computers and all the things we want with lower CO2 emissions.
I think it's just a win-win situation for everybody.
Innovation is at the heart of American agriculture, and part of ensuring a successful business is protecting the environment. That's true with the Stemilt family of Washington State. Rob Stewart has the story.
Cherry harvest time means reunion time at Stemilt Growers, one of America's largest fruit tree orchards, as workers return to bring in the fruit from these trees in central Washington State. If you like cherries, you've probably had some of these. Stemilt is the nation's largest shipper of these delicious delights, and in the midst of harvesting 150 tons of cherries from thousands of trees, the focus today is on family roots and a hill steeped in family history.
We're standing and walking down Stemilt Hill.
Right, this is Stemilt Hill.
What does that mean?
It's an Indian word for foothills.
And this is where the history of Stemilt orchards has unfolded.
It's true. My dad started the packing and growing and the marketing thing in 1962, but we actually started growing cherries in 1893 when my great-grandfather homesteaded here.
Head grower Kyle Matheson farms more than 10,000 acres of fruit. But this family business began with very humble beginnings. Kyle's father planted his first crop of cherry trees at the end of World War II.
Our family's been here I'm the 4th generation, and we've just kind of continued to build on the shoulders of our ancestors. You know, we found that we had a competitive edge in the cherry business.
The fertile soil of Washington's Wenatchee Valley provided perfect conditions for growing cherries as well as apples and pears.
I want to get up in this tree here and show you something because it's really interesting. These trees are loaded. They're only 5 years old. And if you pull one of the cherry clusters back, you'll see these teeny little buds in here. That's actually next year's crop. This crop is being picked today, and this will be on somebody's table within 2 days.
Oh, those beautiful cherries God's given us. Oh, they're like Mother Nature kissing him with sweetness.
The success of the Stemilt fruit shipping business began with Kyle's father, Tom, a gutsy grower and a farming pioneer whose innovations changed an entire industry.
In 1958, I got my returns from the co-op, and I had a total credit of $88 for my crop, and so I was really upset. So I come up with a plan to improve the product, the handling of it especially.
And that plan is alive today
Yeah.
on this orchard.
Yeah, in that orchard, and I'll have to say, most of that plan has been adopted by the whole industry.
Tom's plan? An innovative method for processing that chills the fruit and preserves its freshness as it moves from the orchard to your kitchen.
As you can see, these are much larger and much smaller.
Tom's grandson Tate returned home from Los Angeles to help run the family business. He operates one of the farm's processing plants, line after line filled with cherries and apples.
Got to talk about the stickers.
Yeah, of course.
These stickers are something that your grandfather came up with.
He felt that the apples were going to become a commodity, so he wanted to distinguish his apples and put his name on it, you know, that these were grown on Stemelt Hill. So we started doing it in the 80s, and I guess it always stuck.
That's not all that stuck. Tom's industry standards fill this place, from a machine that sizes cherries to bagging and selling cherries in plastic bags. Tom was the first. Back at Stemelt Hill, the orchard is being protected by a professional falconer to scare away birds that damage the fruit. Each day, he sends his birds soaring over the land with the same protective spirit inspired by Tom Matheson. And just down the hill,
How's the compost going?
Tate's brother-in-law, Robin Graham, runs Stemelt's composting facility. That's not dust you're seeing, it's steam from the 170-degree baking compost filled with apple cores and cherry pits. It's used throughout the orchard and on the 1,000 acres of organics, something Tom Matheson began doing 15 years before organic was the buzz.
When you're farming, you got to look at the whole tree and kind of including the soil and the environment in which it grows. And kind of like the human body, you don't want to treat just the symptoms. You know, we just took a look at the compost pile, and that really highlights that you have to build the environment in which the tree grows.
As for the highlight of Tom Matheson's life, it's his history and heritage.
And the baby's name is going to be? Thomas Kyle.
Thomas Kyle after, yeah, TK.
I don't dwell on the fact that what's developed. I just feel a feeling of thankfulness more than anything else, and appreciation to the Lord and what's provided us.
Whether or not to return to the land after college is a question faced by many young people who grew up in agriculture all over the United States. And one young woman who grew up on a Colorado ranch decided early on that she wanted to return to the land herself, and she's also using her experience to help other young ranchers get their start.
So we're just going along this fence?
Yeah, there's 193 of them.
The Call of the West. Made famous on page and screen. For some, the lure of ranch life is as strong today as it was when settlers crossed these plains. For the Johnson family of southeast Colorado, it's a desire to return to the land. Meet Jen Johnson, her brothers Will, Miles, and Charlie. On any given day, you might find them rounding up cattle on their family's 20,000-acre ranch. They do it the same way their ancestors did more than 100 years ago on this same ground.
I think this is a really special place, and for me, you know, it's just 5 generations of history. You know, this is what my childhood is all about.
Hers may not be the first image that comes to mind when you think of rough and ready ranching, but the reins fit just as snugly in her hands as they do in her younger brother's.
I'm not in a family where women have been delegated to the kitchen and making sure that when all the boys come in for lunch, there's a hot meal. You know, I've been one of the boys, and that's always the way it's been in my family. And I know I'm very lucky to have been in an environment like that.
Her work on the ranch today comes in between receiving a degree from Princeton and grad school. It might not make sense to some, the idea of returning to a place where the neighbor's house isn't even on the horizon and the closest gourmet coffee shop is 63 miles away.
There are a lot of things you can do with an Ivy League education, right?
There are. I have friends all over the world doing fascinating things, important things. But honestly, I don't think there's anything more important that I could do than to use, what I've been blessed with as a background, as well as my education and experience, than to be part of agriculture and be part of ranching.
Jen's commitment to agriculture also brings a new and slightly unorthodox approach. She's developing innovative land conservation and management programs with the Nature Conservancy, an environmental group that hasn't always been looked at favorably in the agriculture community. Frogard Ryan is the program's Eastern Colorado director.
Well, I think ranching and ranchers have been the lifeblood of rural communities and have been preserving wildlife habitat for many generations. And so it's critical that we work hand in hand with the ranching community.
My family for 100 years has been stewarding this land, and it's, our livelihood literally depends on the health of this land and how well we take care of it. Can the Nature Conservancy teach ranchers something? I think absolutely. Can ranchers teach the Nature Conservancy as well as the conservation community at large something? Absolutely.
Her latest project, a program that pairs up young ranchers with innovative established ranchers to help get their start. Jen's father admits he was skeptical when he first learned about his daughter's plans with the Nature Conservancy, but in time he changed his views.
They want to conserve this open space, and that's what we want to do. To make room for the future generations. If there's some tax credits we can use to do it, that just helps us do what we want to do.
And the future generations here all intend to make ranching part of their lives. Jen's brother Will is back for the summer after getting his degree from the University of Pennsylvania.
So it was quite the change coming from population 250 Kit Carson to the middle of Philadelphia. So
I imagine you were a little bit of a culture shock for you
there.
there.
Yeah, it was a good time, but yeah, it took a little getting used to.
Probably made some friends who weren't ranchers, I imagine, right?
No, I looked for them, but in the school of 10,000, I honest to God never found one that was really a rancher. Get this one.
Will intends to return after a career in the Marines.
All of you, I guess at some point will probably be back involved with this ranch again in a larger sense. What do you think it's going to look like out here?
I'm pretty hopeful. I think we're getting some angles to come at agriculture that's not, the typical ag school and stuff. So I think, I don't want to sound too boastful and stuff, but I expect big things from us.
A couple of Ivy Leaguers bringing fresh ideas and a healthy respect for history back to the ranch.
I think somebody's going to win, somebody's going to be able to do this, and I think they'll have as good a chance as any kids to do it.
I'm very proud to use my Ivy League education for this. I couldn't think of a better use for it.
We hope you've enjoyed meeting some of our favorite environmental stewards down on the farm, and please join me in thanking America's farmers for the bounty that they provide, and of course for taking care of that land that sustains us all. We'll see you next time right here on America's Heartland.
There's much more on America's Heartland at our website, including video on the stories from today's show. You can also give us your feedback. Just log on to americasheartland.org. America's Heartland is made possible by
They make up a small part of our population, but have a huge impact on our lives. They take business risks few others would tolerate, all on our behalf. They're American farmers who feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Monsanto would like to recognize them for all they do for the rest of us. Because ultimately, our success and everyone else's depends on theirs.
And by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of agriculture.